How are we doing, ladies and gentlemen? Hope you've all been able to enjoy your weekend. We've got a Bulls game coming up later today. We're getting closer and closer to the end of the season, a season I think most of us would like to forget, but it doesn't stop me from making content for you guys, and in this video I wanted to include you all into the content by reacting to some of your hottest Bulls takes, and we've got some good ones, both looking at this season and to the future of this Bulls team. So with that said, let's get into some of these takes, shall we? But first, a quick word from the sponsor of today's video, Gametime. Now, if you've ever had the pleasure of going to a game in person, it's truly one of the best experiences you'll ever have as a fan, but sometimes that experience of buying tickets is not the best. Are you getting a good deal? Are you not getting a good deal? Are the tickets legitimate? How do you know you're not being scammed? Well, with Gametime, they take out the guesswork when it comes to buying tickets. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. You guys know I live in the Bay Area. The Bulls are going to be coming to town. I am going to be eyeing that game and trying to get a last-minute deal if I can. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater events. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It really is the best place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets. With zone deals, you can pick a section where you want to sit, and Gametime will pick the seats for you for big time savings. And the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. Even if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. So again, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code BULLCENTRAL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code BULLCENTRAL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Now, I requested these takes from both of you on Twitter and the community tab on the channel, so you'll see takes from both, but this first one comes to us from Slick G6999. The Bulls will make the playoffs. Sadly, it's a hot take. You're right, it sadly is a hot take to most, but in my view, I actually don't even think this is that hot of a take. Like, if these were the days before the play-in tournament and only the top 8 teams made it into the playoffs, then yes, this would be a hot take and a very unlikely scenario that the Bulls would be able to make the playoffs, because there's a pretty big gap between them and the Magic right now with the 8th seed, and too few games for the Bulls to really make headway into the 8th spot, especially when the Magic have the easiest remaining schedule for the rest of the season. But with the play-in, anything can happen. You're talking about having two just really good games where DeMar and Coby go off and they get hot, and the Bulls have suddenly found their way into the playoffs, even if you didn't finish in the top 8. I mean, we almost saw that last season in which the Bulls finished 10th in the East, a very disappointing season, and then they messed around and were just a few minutes away from making the playoffs until they fell apart in those final 3 minutes against the Heat in Miami. So yeah, I mean, based on what we know of this team and it looking unlikely that they would make the playoffs, with the play-in though, and it being single elimination games, I would not be shocked if they somehow squeak their way in. Not that they're going to be going anywhere once they get there. They will get stomped by Boston in the first round, but you know, the playoff goal for the front office is thus achieved. Next, we've got Bulls Show Yo. Batum will turn into a solid rotational piece. I just don't see it. I mean, he's probably going to get some opportunity here and there with Patrick Williams being out for the rest of the season, but I just don't see how you can conclude he's going to be a solid rotational player for this team when he's played all but 6 minutes all season. Like, I don't see him beating out Julian Phillips or Dalen Terry in the rotation, especially with a coach who likes to keep a short 8 to 9 man rotation max. The only instance in which we see Batum becoming a solid rotational piece is if the Bulls suffer another injury to one of their guys in the rotation, which, fingers crossed, hopefully that doesn't happen. Next up, we've got Villain Serial 15. The front office is going to use our recent injuries as an excuse to run it back next season. Not sure if that's a hot take, sadly. I mean, yeah, it really isn't a hot take, but I wanted to include it anyway. Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that the injuries are going to be laid on thick in the end of season exit interviews, as well as going into media day next year. I mean, we already kind of heard it from AK in his press conference after the trade deadline, talking about how they were struggling without Zach Lavine, how they're a better team with him, and how he feels that when this team is healthy, they're competitive, that dreaded word. There is no doubt in my mind that, one, they're going to run this thing back because they really don't have many avenues to actually make concrete changes given the cap situation they have found themselves in, and unable to trade some of their higher paid players because the value isn't there. And two, even if they don't fully believe it, they will use all of the recent injuries as an excuse for yet another underwhelming season. Like, if the Bulls miss the playoffs, which again was AK's goal for the team that he called out at the trade deadline, if they miss the playoffs, I doubt he's going to call it a failure, but rather point to injuries for why this season resulted in this outcome. I can already hear the quotes now in that end of season presser. Next up, we've got Chase Langer. Bulls make a huge move in the offseason. I'd like to think that's going to be the case, but I just don't see how. Not with the way the front office has been talking, not with the way DeMar has been sounding like a guy who is already knowing that he's going to be getting re-signed by this team, not when Zach Lavine and Nikola Vucevic are more or less untradeable assets on their contracts. Unless the Bulls want to attach assets to said trades, which I don't think they're going to be willing to do, the only big move, if we want to call it that, is maybe, and I still think it's a pretty big stretch, but maybe they trade Alex Caruso at the offseason. If Caruso gives them any indication that he's not going to be re-signing with the Bulls and wants to play for a contender, and that it would make more sense for them to trade him rather than letting him walk for nothing in free agency the following offseason. Because just like at the deadline, I'm sure Caruso is going to have a host of suitors in the offseason for a contending team trying to add veteran leadership and defense. AC is likely going to be the only player that's going to garner significant value in a trade return. So I could maybe see the Bulls pulling the trigger on that. But even then, I find it unlikely because they have shown no willingness to move Alex Caruso unless it was for an insane haul. I would find it more likely that the Bulls and Alex Caruso agree on a contract extension this offseason than him getting traded. Now that said, I did say a few weeks back that I would be shocked if Zach returns to the Bulls next season, so while yes, that would be a big move, but in my view, it's not going to be a big move in the sense that it would be a big return for the Bulls. A big move to me is one that actually puts the Bulls in a better position than they were last year. And if the Bulls do in fact trade Zach Lavine this offseason, it's likely going to be in the form of salary dumping or even attaching assets just to be able to move off of that contract. Next up, we've got TYTY. Coby White will make an even bigger jump next season and will make his first All-Star appearance as well as All-NBA third team. Lonzo Ball being back will get him more open looks too, even though he won't be the same Zoe we saw from the 21-22 season. Man, I like the optimism, but it certainly is a stretch. I mean, one, that's assuming Lonzo Ball comes back in the first place at all. But then Coby White, well, I can see him potentially making an All-Star team, even though I just have a hard time seeing who he's going to beat out among the current Eastern Conference All-Star guards to be able to get there. But All-NBA, yeah, I can't see that happening. Like, as good as Coby White has been, and I do think he'll get even better going into next season, to make All-NBA third team, which really puts him at a top 15 level player in the league since only 15 players could be selected to All-NBA between those three teams. Coby White, top 15 player against all the other talent, especially guard level talent, yeah, I don't see it, at least not for next season. I will say though, you are right about the Lonzo factor. If he does in fact come back and even looks just 60% of his old self and can still maintain his shooting and court vision, yeah, it's going to draw defense's attention away from Coby White. He won't see as many double teams as he's currently seeing, and he'll get better looks playing off the ball than him trying to create difficult shots for himself. Next up, we've got Kyle, extremely hot, but Patrick Williams takes his qualifying offer next year and earns that second max contract on the team. Wow, very hot indeed. I wouldn't be surprised if Pat takes the qualifying offer given this recent injury and him being out for the rest of the season. He's likely not going to get a big offer from either the Bulls or another team for that matter as a restricted free agent. It's probably going to make more sense for him to bet on himself and take that one-year qualifying offer, which I don't know what that amount is, but it's likely in that $10 to $11 million range based on his current salary. Play on that one-year offer, try and have a breakout year in his fifth season to secure a big bag as an unrestricted free agent, whether it be from the Bulls or another team. But a max contract? Nah, come on now. Unless he breaks out into an all-star where he just shoots up to being like a top 20-25 player in the league, he's not going to get a max contract. The Bulls also likely won't even be able to afford giving him a max deal depending on the figure they extend DeMar DeRozan for, and whether they can actually get off Zach's contract. I mean, I hope you're right, because Pat getting a max contract in the summer of 2025 means he had an insane season, a most improved player of the year type season, which is excellent news for the Bulls, who are desperately needing every bit of success they can get from their young players. Next up, we've got Brady Huber. Billy will get fired this offseason. That would be nice, wouldn't it? I mean, really, he should have been fired last year or at some point this season, but no, you're forgetting that Billy Donovan was given that secret contract extension, which I believe just went into effect. By firing Billy, they would have to pay him for the next couple of seasons for him to not be the coach of the team and have to pay for two coaches. Do you guys know this ownership? That's the last thing they would want to do. They already had to do it twice when they fired Tibbs and Hoiberg while they were still under contract. It's not going to happen with Billy Donovan. And for some reason, this management loves Billy. It's like he can do no wrong with this team. Don't forget, they pursued him heavily and hired him out of nowhere when it was assumed he wasn't even a candidate on their list. As soon as Billy was free to pick up on the job market after leaving OKC, AK jumped on that opportunity to hire him. So no, even if the Bulls miss the playoffs, even if they close out the season poorly, even worse than what we're seeing right now, Billy isn't going anywhere. They'll make roster changes before that happens. Next up, we've got Fen Moods. The deepest issue with the Bulls as an organization is the team culture. The last Bulls lineup I saw that was passionate, had camaraderie, and played for each other was the D Rose Tibbs years. But the lineups that came next seemed more like work friends as opposed to brothers. I honestly don't think this is a hot take at all. I get why you have it as a hot take, because when you think about some of the biggest issues with the Bulls, most people like to jump to the issues that are happening on the court. But as I've said before, the biggest thing that this team struggles with is their overall culture and chemistry. You're 1000% right. Those early D Rose years, those guys were like a brotherhood. They loved playing together. They played hard every night. They were ultimate competitors. And you see it right now with them being friends years later. I mean, really, ever since the Bulls traded Luol Deng, and then later fired Tom Thibodeau, then later trading Rose, that culture has never been regained. Not even with Jimmy Butler, because a lot of times he wasn't the best teammate, let's be real here. Then of course they brought in Wade, Rondo, that was a disaster. Then they went to the rebuild, and agreed, they've never had a strong identity since then. A strong team bond and a winning culture that they used to have. And I would agree, it's a big issue, if not the biggest issue, for why this current core struggles so much. Yeah, the fit isn't there, roster construction overall isn't the best, but they shouldn't be as bad as they are, not with the talent they have. And that's in large part due to the poor culture that exists with this team. Anyway guys, I'm going to end it there for this edition of your Bulls Hot Takes. Keep the takes coming and I'll try to do some more of these. Don't forget, the Bulls have the Pelicans tonight. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.